What is up, guys? Bobgar here, and this is the third episode in my vlog series. Just wanted to catch up from the last week or so. Starting off with the poll I put up. So I got more responses than I expected, and still not a huge number, 24. I actually think that's not necessarily accurate because I think it double counts people. If you check more than one, it comes up as more votes, but still probably, I would guess, somewhere between 10 and 15 people voted, and that's awesome. It gives me good information about what you guys want to see, and so it looks like we're going to be doing Dragonstorm next. I tried to record episodes this weekend. I'm not 100% sure I like my list, so I might change it a little bit. I tried two different lists, one normal Dragonstorm and then one Dragonstorm Tron, and I'm thinking I'm going to stick with the normal Dragonstorm, although Dragonstorm Tron was pretty pricey, pretty interesting. It ended up being pretty pricey because Tron won this weekend, so the prices of Tron lands are up really high, but otherwise it's not that expensive, so definitely an interesting way to go. Not the optimal Tron build, but it might be the optimal Dragonstorm build. It's hard to tell. Both builds I made are pretty bad, but it's a fun deck to play, and I'll definitely post videos of it sometime. Probably not this week. It'll probably slip into next week. But yeah, thank you guys for answering the poll. I'll probably do that again when I'm getting ready to do another one, although I might just take this ordering and do a couple off of this. All right, I can't click next. I need to actually click over to what I wanted to click on, and that is I watched Altered Carbon last week, in the last week with Melissa, so we finished it completely as of, I think, last night. And I wanted to give a quick review. Overall, my review is kind of, it was all right. It was very high concept. The concepts were really cool, but the acting often felt a little stiff. I mean, I don't know if it was actually the actors not doing a good job or if it was how it was written. And there's some other things I didn't like about it. One of the big ones was the main cop character, the female cop character, who's also a little bit of becomes a little bit of a love interest at some point. Hopefully that's not too much of a spoil. I'm going to keep this pretty spoiler light, but some of this stuff comes up. I mean, it comes up pretty quick, so it's not. I don't think there's anything that's going to be too spoilery. But her, and really the whole police department, none of the characters made that much sense to me. That whole setting seemed pretty stiff and just not believable, and it wasn't interesting. It was very soap operatic. It felt like watching a daytime soap opera. And I think it leads into this next point a little bit, where there was a pretty big contrast between some of the scenes that felt really cool in sci-fi. Like the picture I have on screen right now looks pretty cool in sci-fi. I mean, you could see something like that in Las Vegas or something maybe, but it has that cool sci-fi look. And then a lot of sets that just looked like they were ripped out of crime dramas from the 90s. And it just doesn't both look futuristic and also doesn't look high budget. It just looks like, oh, they rented out a warehouse and they like half decorated it. Maybe there's a fancy gizmo, but it doesn't feel sci-fi in the same way some of the scenes feel sci-fi. So there's a really big disconnect there. And then the rich people have like toga parties and stuff, and that also feels way out of place. It's like, when is this set? Is it set in like BC, or is it set in like 1990, or is it set in the future like it's supposed to be? I don't know. The show doesn't feel very cohesive. It does have a lot of cool characters though. I really like the flashback characters. It flashes back to his sister and the people that trained him, and I think all of those characters are really good, well acted, interesting. Those parts of the show are really interesting in general. I thought like they did a really good job with that, and it's weird. The flashbacks, which are back in time, feel more futuristic than the future. I don't know if it was just budgetary things or they just couldn't get sets that worked well or what it was, but that's the way it ended up being. And then some of the characters in future are really cool. There's an AI hotel you meet at the beginning of the first episode, or the end of the first episode, I think, and he is really fun and funny, and I thought it was going to go away after the first episode. I thought it was like a one-time thing, but he sticks around through most of the show and makes occasional appearances, and he's really good both as like well-acted, interesting character, cool plot line. Like that a lot. And so I guess my final conclusion is I think it's worth watching. I don't think it's great. But if you like high concept sci-fi, and the concepts are really cool, it's a lot about like switching your mind around, like switching your mind between bodies, which is a discussion me and my girlfriend get in a lot, actually, even without this movie. We talk a lot, weird thing to talk a lot about, but whether if like you were killed, but all of your thoughts and memories were transferred into a new body, is that still you? Which is an interesting question. If you have answers to that question, post them below. I'd love to hear them. I'm not going to espouse my own beliefs right now, but yeah, I thought they did a really good job handling that and had some really interesting concepts in it. So yeah, that was my thought on that show. Definitely watch it if you like high concept sci-fi, but don't expect too much. All right, so there was that. And then the last thing I wanted to get into before I get into the thing that's going to take up most of the time here is programming tutorial. I talked about it last time. I'm going to do it. I started recording it. It's going to require more editing and more time than I think I thought. I also feel like there's a flaw in how I wanted to do it originally, so I'm revisiting it. So I'll probably re-record that today. Hopefully I'll post that sometime this week. I want to have my girlfriend go through it and see if she can do it. She's done a tiny bit of programming, but not that much. And if she can do most of this stuff without a ton of additional help from me other than the video, then I'm going to feel pretty good about posting it and feeling like it's useful to people. I'm probably going to post it on my main channel for now. There's some chance I'm going to split off a second channel that I'll call something very specific. Maybe I'll rename this one to like Bobgar MTG, and I'll name the other one like Making Games for Fun or whatever crappy name would actually make sense for it. But right now I'm just going to post it on the main channel because whatever. And the last thing I wanted to do is the last week we finally ran out of vintage cube videos. I made so many of those, but we finally ran out, and I wanted to do a recap of how vintage cube went for me. And the end result is it went quite well. Let me bring this stats page up that I wrote up. I was originally going to do this as a separate video, but I just think it's a little overkill. I don't think that makes too much sense, so just figured I would do it here. We played 8 leagues total. We had 2 3-0s and 6 2-1s. So we didn't actually have a single losing record in any of the 8 leagues we played through. We had 18 match wins and 6 match losses. That brings our match win percentage to 75. That's pretty good in my opinion. We had 38 game wins and 19 game losses. So that's 2/3 of our games were wins. Yeah, 19 is half of 38. So again, incredibly good. It really surprised me. I think we got a little lucky. I mean, I must just be also reasonably good at Cube and probably reasonably good at Magic. I played enough that I guess it's not that surprising that I'm pretty good at it, but I went in thinking I was going to be like below 50%, and I did surprisingly well. I definitely surprised myself in how well all of this went. So I have a lot of self-doubt, and I call out myself on a lot of mistakes, and I think part of it is always you see the mistakes you make, but you don't always see the mistakes your opponent makes. So you always feel like you're the one who makes all the mistakes, or makes bad draft picks, or you know, does something stupid. Like I think I literally swung a Massacre Worm into a Baneslayer Angel one game. I think I still won that game too, but it was just like that was like so bad. And you go, well, you know, I should lose more games than other people because I make so many mistakes, but everybody who plays Magic makes mistakes. You just, a lot of times you don't end up seeing them. And yeah, I must be doing something right because that record I think is actually really good. So I was happy with it. And then I want to go step by step through every deck and grade it and talk a little bit about it. I'm going to try to speed this up from what I did originally, which was one of the reasons I didn't make it as a separate video because it like took 20 minutes to do. Whoop. That's weird. Oh, I see. Perfect. Here's the first one. I gave it a B-. This was blue-white control. We won our first 2 matches pretty easily, but we lost to the blue control mirror at the very end, and the reason was they had better stuff than us. So the strength of this deck were Treachery and Control Magic are great answers to a lot of decks. A lot of decks just really struggle with them because they go, oh, we're going to tap out for a really big thing, and if then on your turn you can just take it over, that's going to put you way, way ahead. But it had a bunch of weaknesses. I was running Stoneforge. It's not a very good Stoneforge deck. We only had one thing to fetch, and wasn't even like a super important fetch, and I don't think we ever actually used it to good effect. So it's possible the Stoneforge package shouldn't have even been in there. If I could have gotten a little bit more removal or something like that, it probably would have been better. I don't regret putting it in, but yeah, not the best. Control Magic does have some bad matchups, and Control Magic is pretty much how this deck wins. I mean, we have a little bit of top end, but not that much. So we're pretty reliant on Control Magic, and if you're playing against Storm, they're not going to play a creature for you to control, and then you end up in a lot of trouble. So we looked at that we didn't run into those, but that's definitely a weakness of the deck. And then the biggest weakness is just we only got one piece of Power 9. It was an off-color Mox. We didn't get the cards we really wanted, like Mana Drain, things like that. Swords to Plowshares would have been great. Ancestral Recall, you know, would have made the deck amazing, or Time Walk. So missed out on the super high grade things. That's why it's a B-, but I thought it was pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. Deck number 2, this actually might have been the deck that I think was strongest out of all of them. It only went 2-1, but it had every right to go 3-0. We kind of made we had a really bad draw in match 2 against Storm, and this deck basically if I drew a blue source, it would have won on turn 3 3 or 4, and I didn't draw a blue source after turn like 7 or 8. It does bring up one of the big weaknesses, which the deck doesn't have good fixing, but yeah, it's still, I felt like we probably should have had it. So the good things about the deck is Tinker Blightsteel is really reliable. When we got it out, we won almost every game that we did. Tezzeret was a pretty good backup plan. One game we just ran over our opponent by turn 4 just by making our artifacts into 5/5s, and that felt great. And the reanimate backup plan wasn't terrible either. Recurring Nightmare, get Shieldred, get use Liliana Dust Majesty to reanimate things. Felt pretty good in general. Felt pretty strong. Weaknesses. The biggest weakness is it really needed better tutors. We were missing out on all of the best tutors. Grim Tutor really just isn't great, and that was the best tutor we had. We also had Demonic Pact, I think, which I didn't even bother running, although maybe I should have. It could be that Tinker is powerful enough that it's worth running, but that was definitely an issue. Would have wanted Vampiric and Demonic and all of those. Also, just not the best Recurring Nightmare deck. You can Recurring Nightmare in here. It's still not bad, but like we don't have very many value Recurring Nightmare threats. We have Baleful Strix to draw you a card, Bone Shredder to kill a creature, but you have to have those in hand. It's not that likely. It's not bad in the sense that Bitter Blossom gives you lots of tokens, so you can keep sacking tokens to regenerate actual big creatures, but yeah, not the best regenerate deck, but still a B+. I thought it was very good. Next up, this one was probably one of the weakest decks. It's pretty powerful and straightforward mono black reanimator. Splashing white just for a few tiny things. The flashback on what's it called? Our reanimate spell, Unburial Rites, and then the ability to animate Shambling Vents. That's pretty much the only thing that white's in the deck for. And it worked pretty well. The one match we lost to Iona Shield of Meria, and that is definitely the weakness of the deck. Being monocolored is not great in that sense. We were running Recurring Nightmare. This one also has a problem with it's not really a great Recurring Nightmare deck. Not that it's terrible, but not the best. And we just didn't have the best reanimate targets in general. We had Gristlebrand, which is great, and Shieldred, which is pretty good. But I usually would want one more big reanimator, and Ralzaketh was not great. We had Massacre Worm in the sideboard. I probably should put it in the main board over Ralzaketh. I think I overvalued him. I had never played with him before, and he seemed neat, but just didn't end up being that good. But yeah, those were the weaknesses. And I should have mentioned the advantages first. Probably the advantages are monocolored, super consistent. We did get a bunch of the best reanimate cards and a few of the best reanimate targets. And this time we actually ended up with really good tutors. We had both Demonic Tutor and Vampiric Tutor, which are the best tutors in the whole cube pretty much. And that just meant we could consistently reanimate pretty easily. So it was a very consistent reanimator deck. Not the worst ever, but just it kind of fell short. Being monocolored really hurt it. And yeah, not having any power hurt it. Things like that. Well, I guess it did happen. I had a Mox Ruby. I lied. Did have power. But yeah, not the best, not the worst. And then we went on our first attempt at Mono Red Burn. I gave this a B. Strong, aggressive, fast, consistent deck. Some of the best Mono Red cards like Sulfuric Vortex. Without Sulfuric Vortex, I think Mono Red is just not that great, so we lucked out to get that. I like Shrine of Burning Rage a lot too. Confluence isn't terrible, Fiery Confluence that is. But it was also missing some of the best cards, especially the low end. So especially the low end, we were missing Goblin Guide, we were missing Lightning Bolt, some of the best low end cards possible. And we also, some of our 2-drops weren't great. We really wanted a little bit more burn at the 2 spot so that we could push through damage when we needed to. We definitely ended up in situations where, well, once all your creatures get chumped, it starts to get hard to win. So B overall, but I thought it was pretty good. We were pretty close to winning with it. Had some bad luck in our last match. And then this one was another one of my favorites. This might be my favorite deck overall, but it had some obvious problems, which is the reason I only felt comfortable giving it a B. We got pretty much everything we could want from the Splinter Twin combo, and it's a very strong combo. We also got a lot of the just best blue cards that are out there. Treachery, Mystic Confluence, and Muldrifter are all all-stars that I love. Dak Faden is great. Counterspell is great. Literal Core is just super good, makes your deck super consistent. Lightning Bolt is one of the best red cards ever printed, so overall the deck just felt very, very strong, but there were a bunch of problems with it too. We missed 1 or 2 combo pieces we could have gotten. I think Zealous Conscripts was the big one, although I think what we took over it, we needed more. I don't actually exactly remember. But we missed Zealous Conscripts. Maybe not enough high end. Having Inferno Titan up there is nice, but it could have used maybe one more finisher, might have helped. And then the big things were no power, no moxes and things like that. And then also no fixing. And this was a big problem throughout the whole cube. I took fixing much lower than I probably should have. And in this deck in particular, I mean, you want to have 3 red for Kiki, and with no fixing, it gets pretty hard. So that was my thought here. And then we got our first 3-0. I gave this one a B+, probably partly because it 3-0'd, but I also do think it was slightly stronger than the other mono red deck, and I'll go through and say why. So we went 3-0. This time we got a lot of the best 1-drops, which are, you know, one of the most important things to have in a fast deck like mono red. Koth is also probably the best mono red walker. I still love the new Chandra, but I just don't think she's as good as Koth. And we got Vortex again. So we got a lot of the best cards. This time we got, like I said, we got the Lightning Bolt is one of the really big ones we got. We had some disadvantages. The 2-drops were a little light. I'm not that big a fan of Winter Orb. Maybe we should have run something else instead. Shrine certainly would have been a lot better. And I think the reason I like this deck so much more than the other version, although I didn't say it here explicitly, is it has a lot more burn. So we're running 2 3-mana burn spells. All right, 3 2-mana burn spells. I said that backwards. Incinerate, Lightning Strike, and Searing Spear, as well as Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning. So we have a lot of just burn to face, and I think that is super valuable in these decks to push you over that edge. And we were just missing that a little bit in the other build. So you would kind of stall out towards the end and not be able to just have that burn to face to finish things out after they start putting down a board of creatures. So yeah, I thought this one was a little bit better, but not very much better. I think part of it was certainly just luck, but yeah, this one did well. And then this is the second to last one. We went white-black, kind of a white-black tokens theme. I love this deck. I think this was so much fun. Gave it a B. We definitely had some matchup issues. We definitely didn't hit everything we would have wanted. Super consistent. Recurring Nightmare was actually really good. Recurring Nightmare Sun Titan was just ridiculous. I remember that, I think it was the first game we played, first match we played. They kept killing our Sun Titan, and then I would use Recurring Nightmare, sacking like Gideon of the Trials to bring back Sun Titan, and then when Sun Titan entered the battlefield, I'd bring back Gideon of the Trials, and we could do it all over again. And it's like he would bring back one of those little creatures with him, and then you could sack the little creature to bring him back. So the fact that you could bring back Gideon of Trials is extra nice because he survives most Wraths. So yeah, I thought that was really good. We also ended up getting 2 Moxes. That ended up making the deck really explosive in the early game, and that won us some matches too, certainly. It was a little fair for Cube. We had definitely the problem where if our opponent did broken things, we just couldn't do that much. You know, we would win the long game a lot of times, but if you're slow, you just don't get to the long game. And missing out on a little bit of the 1-drop, you can kind of tell 2 and 3 are super full, but the 1-drop slot there is just super empty. And so the one loss we had was to a like Eureka show and tell style deck, and this is definitely not the best in that matchup. We just don't have that much top end. We don't want that much top end, but we don't have that much top end. We're really trying to grind our opponents out. So that, you know, the style of our deck cost us that match pretty heavily, and we don't have that much disruption for them either. We have like maybe a couple kill spells, but not a whole lot. And most of those don't stop a whatever. Oh my god, what's it called? I'm gonna go back to the beginning. That one, Blightsteel Colossus. All right, so that was that deck. And then finally, this one also I gave a B+2. We got a 3-0, kind of green-red ramp. One person said I shouldn't be running Sneak Attack in this deck. Optimally, they're probably right, although I do think it's a pretty good Sneak Attack deck. But I love Sneak Attack. It was a lot of fun. We had a consistent ramp plan and some of the best ramp threats, a few good mana dorks. One of the things I really liked about this deck is we also had those mid-range mana dorks that I think are a little undervalued in Cube. I really like Xenagos and Garruk both. Oracle's alright too. I'm actually not as big a fan as Oracle as some people are, but it's good. It's not a bad card. Just 4 mana for a 2/2 isn't that good. I mean, it's good. I'm not gonna try to downplay Oracle too much. But big disadvantages, we ended up getting no power. And we missed out on a lot of what were classically considered the best mono green cards. We didn't get Raphaelos, we didn't get Gaia's Cradle, we didn't get Channel, and we also ran almost no answers. Also, if we wanted to be a Sneak Attack deck, probably getting Through the Breach would have helped a little bit too. Not super important, but yeah, the fact that we didn't run any answers, I think, is why it's a little impressive that we went 3-0 with this deck. But when you're running the best threats, sometimes you don't need to run the best answers. You know what I mean? I mean, that's kind of how that Eureka deck we lost to in the league previous to this work. They weren't running many answers either. I don't think. They were just like, I'm just gonna run all the biggest threats, and your answers probably won't answer all of them, you know. So anyway, I was happy with this one. Nothing really. I don't think any of my decks I gave an A to. I don't think any of them were that good. None of them were close to perfect, but they were a lot of fun to play. I enjoyed them all. I don't know if I could pick a favorite, but yeah, I had a ton of fun. I am super happy with the score, opening it back. And I guess that's the vlog for the week. Hopefully this didn't ramble too much. I feel like I've gone on for a little bit. But yeah, awesome. Let me know if you guys have any comments or questions or want to know anything about my life. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.